You're watching NASA TV.
Good morning and welcome to the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. I'm Leah Cheshire and we are live today to bring you coverage of US EVA 86. The spacewalkers are about 30 minutes ahead of schedule today. They have completed the pre-breathe portion and are already suited up in the equipment lock portion of the crew airlock. Today is the 261st spacewalk in the history of station assembly and maintenance, and it's scheduled to last approximately 6.5 hours once the spacewalkers switch their spacesuits to battery power. Today's spacewalkers are NASA astronaut Steve Bowen and UAE astronaut Sultan Al Neyadi. It's Bowen's 8th spacewalk, and he'll be EV1, wearing red stripes around the legs on his spacesuit. It's also the first ever spacewalk for an astronaut from the United Arab Emirates. Sultan Al Neyadi will be EV2 and he will wear an unmarked suit. Woody Hoberg is the suit IV, meaning he's the lead on station for getting the crew properly suited and ready to head out the hatch. Today, Bowen and Al Neyadi will address two primary tasks. The duo will exit the station's Quest airlock to prepare for future installation of upgraded solar arrays on the starboard side of the station's truss this summer, which includes routing cables and covering modification kits with MLI or multi-layer insulation. The astronauts will then retrieve S-band antenna equipment and bring it inside the space station before it is eventually returned to Earth for refurbishment and relaunch. The crew on station consists of 3 NASA astronauts, 1 UAE astronaut, and 3 Roscosmos cosmonauts. Steve Bowen, Woody Hoberg, and Frank Rubio of NASA, Sultan Al Neyadi of UAE, Andrei Fedyaev, and Dmitry Petelin, and Sergei Prokopyev of Roscosmos make up the feed of the team. Is currently flying 262 statute miles over the North Pacific. The team is now taking over from the Orbit 1 team, and his is Sandy Fletcher. She Right now, the crew members are in the equipment lock portion of the Quest airlock. This is where they have been this morning as they donned their suits, continued their pre-breathing exercises, and they will eventually attach the SAFER, or the aid for EVA rescue, in the equipment lock. Eventually they'll move to the crew lock, which is behind Woody Hoberg at this time. That's the outermost part of the Quest airlock, where they will conduct final communications and suit system checks with the ground. They will eventually change their suits to internal battery power, which starts our timer for today's spacewalk. Up until now, the spacewalkers were conducting the in-suit light exercise protocol, also known as ISLE. This helps acclimate their bodies to lower pressure inside the suit and helps astronauts avoid what we call the bends by purging the nitrogen in their blood slowly. And again, another look at our spacewalkers today. Steve Bowen will be conducting his 8th spacewalk. He'll be EV1 wearing red stripes. So far, he's conducted 7 spacewalks, totaling 47 hours and 18 minutes. A little bit of added excitement today as Sultan Al Nayati will be making the first ever spacewalk for the United Arab Emirates. Overall, it's the 261st spacewalk in support of station assembly maintenance and upgrades, and our 4th for this year. We have 2 more spacewalks coming up soon. Russian Spacewalk 65 and 66 coming up in May. Again, this look inside Mission Control Houston as we are in a satellite handover with the International Space Station. Teams here are also conducting their handover as Orbit 1 hands over to Orbit 2 this morning, preparing them for today's spacewalk. And this view inside the airlock as Woody Hoberg on the bottom left of the screen and Frank Rubio up at the top of the screen prepare to attach the SAFER, the Simplified Aid for EVA Rescue, to NASA astronaut Steve Bowen. Again, this is sort of like a jetpack that is worn as a backpack. The astronauts use 2 tethers at all times, so they do not become detached from the International Space Station, but this is another backup option for them in case they were to drift from the International Space Station. As our astronauts continue to prepare for today's spacewalk, a little bit of information about the suits and the pre-breathe process so far. At nominal pressure, the suit is about 4.3 psi, or pounds per square inch of pressure. And to put that into context, the atmospheric pressure we're used to on Earth is about 14.7 psi, which is approximately the same as the inside of the space station, with a mixed oxygen and nitrogen environment similar to what we have here on Earth. The 4.3 pounds per square inch of pressure in the spacesuit is similar to what you'd experience at about 30,000 feet elevation, and that low pressure helps the spacesuit feel a little more flexible, which we really need because the gloves can be kind of rigid, especially during a 6.5-hour spacewalk, so it helps the astronauts flex their hands in those gloves. We discussed the pre-breathe process earlier. That includes about 50 minutes of cycles where we spend 4 minutes exercising and 1 minute resting. That exercise looks pretty simple. It looks like moving your arms and legs just a little bit, but this helps purge nitrogen from their bloodstream to help maintain a 100% oxygen environment. Pre-breathing consists of 2 phases. In the first, the crew breathes 100% oxygen through a mask to begin purging that nitrogen, and in the